Hello everyone, my name is Paul Third, and this week I want to discuss why you, yes I'm speaking to you, should be mixing on more than one headphone if you plan on mixing professionally. Now in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to categorise these characteristics into four main aspects. Things that I've been taught and things that I've found for myself work really well when mixing on headphones to get the best translation possible. Because at the end of the day, regardless if you're mixing on headphones or you're mixing on earbuds or you're mixing on speakers, expensive or budget, your main aim as a mixing engineer is to get the best translation possible. And the way that I do it, I genuinely do think is going to help you out. So let's get straight into it. Actually, no, right. Before we get into this, very, very important, I'll make it brief. Make sure that if you've not watched it, or you don't know already, watch a video, I'll link it up here or there, and it's talking all about how to EQ your headphones and the importance of EQing your headphones. If you don't EQ your headphones and you don't use a crossfeed plugin, I use Goodhertz Can Opener. If you don't use the two of them in conjunction, a lot of what I'm talking about here isn't really going to work to its full effect. You'll still be able to get the characteristics, but by not EQing them to Harman, it's going to be a little bit difficult and it's not going to work as well as the way that I and others do it. So watch that video and learn about it and then come back. Right, so the first characteristic that I look for in headphones, and it's probably the most important thing that I look for, is soundstage. Soundstage is absolutely key when you're mixing, because you need the separation in order to place things in the mix correctly. I've always found that if you don't have a good soundstage in your monitoring, what you're going to do is you're going to actually end up EQing and processing things more in order to get things to sit right in the mix. When it comes to mixing, I always find that panning is your best friend. And if you have a good soundstage that allows you to really place things in that spectrum, you'll actually find that you need less processing. And that's why I use these. These are the Hyphamin HE1000 SE. They're £2,000. They're very, very expensive. And many people are surprised that I use
audiophile headphones.
Which is fucking, what a bullshit fucking term. At the end of the day, right, many people call it like a 3D soundstage. All I can tell you is, when I'm wearing these, I can listen to any mix and I could hear the placement of anything in a mix. There have been mixes, professional mixes that I've heard, that I've not heard certain elements until I've had these on. And it's amazing how I can pick every detail of a song out and be like, oh wow, I didn't really hear that as audible as before. And that's why I do about 85% of the mix with these. They are incredibly clean, very, very, very high resolution, very, very detailed. And I just find that I can get basically the whole mix there by just having a good headphone with a really clear and detailed soundstage. Now, obviously, not everybody has £2,000 to spend on a pair of headphones just for soundstage. There are some budget options that I've heard of. I've not heard every headphone, but the Hyphamin Sindaras are a really good option. They don't have the sound. Look, until you hear the HE1000 SE, you don't really realise the soundstage that you're missing in headphones. They're fucking spectacular. But in regards to like a budget range of headphones, the Hyphamin Sindara does have a very nice soundstage. Sounds better than nearly most of the dynamics that I'd heard. Sounded better than Odysseys and stuff like that. And it's a very good average general playing field headphone. It gives you transient detail, and overall it's just a very good headphone for mixing, I found. That's why I was mixing on them for years. And Emre Çelik, my good friend Emre Çelik, who I mention all the time, there's a podcast that we made about talking about mixing professionally on headphones. I'll leave a link in the description for you. It's a must watch. I'll give you more context to what we're talking about here. Now, when it comes to the Sennheisers, I always get mixed opinions. Some people love the soundstage, some people see it as a bit fake. For me, as long as I could pick out all the elements and it folds down really well and it translates to speakers, which I always find the HEs do, then you've got nothing to worry about. Now, the last pair of headphones that don't cost £2,000, actually they're under £500, that I think are phenomenal for soundstage are these. these Sony MDR MV1s. They sound amazing for immersive stuff. Like if you're listening to Atmos mixes on headphones, or you're listening especially to Sony 360 on headphones, like, oh my god, I've got a video on them, and it's just, they're incredible. But for stereo mixing, the soundstage is amazing, and they're super, super light. These are like probably the lightest headphones I've ever used. They're a joy to wear. Now, these cost, I think, about £350 or something like that. Pretty sure it's around that. EQ them, and yeah, you'll get amazing soundstage out of them. And overall, they're just a very good reference headphone to use. Actually, I'll come back to these at the end of this video. However, as important as soundstage is, it really is important, what I find with lots of headphones that have amazing soundstage is that they're normally very relaxed, and they're very slow, and they're not fast in their decay time. And I always feel that I'm lacking a bit of punch, and I'm lacking the mid channel because the separation is so vast. It's honestly amazing how you could get so used to that wide, expansive sound, and then you switch to something like this, the Hyphaman Ananda Nanos. These are planar like the HE1000 SE, and they have a amazingly fast decay time. These are unbelievably clean, like very, very low distortion. Now, many people may query me on that because Amir from Audio Science Review did a review of them, and his measurements showed very high distortion. However, be very careful with Amir's measurements in egg-shaped cups, because what me and Emra have found is that nearly every review he's done of headphones that have egg-shaped cups seem to have really, really high distortion, when really it looks like it's because, I think it's the grass measurement head, dummy head, or whatever he's using, the fit, he doesn't get a tight fit to it. So the tests, in our opinion, are being skewed because Hyphaman measured these as super, super low THD, and I think Artings did a measurement. He had a pair of Odysseys that are super, super, super clean, and he did the exact same test setup with these, and these were basically the exact same distortion. Very, very low and very, very clean. You can just use your ears and you can hear it. Now, these retail for, I think, around £600 and odd, around that. Honestly, it's proper bang for buck. Like, these are amazing, especially for mastering engineers. Like, if you just want to hear all the mouth clicks and guitar squeaks and everything, like upfront detail, like, honestly, you need to try these out. And that's one of the main reasons why Odysseys have been so popular for mixing on headphones, because they have the slam, their bass is super tight and rich, and you can just hear everything in the low end. A great example are the Odyssey, sorry, I was going to say Hyphaman again, the Odyssey closebacks. Ed's got them, and I was listening to them in the studio, and I was like, oh my god, there is that super tight, really clear, distinct low end. However, they are one of the most fucking heavy headphones ever. Honestly, you need a neck brace just to mix for a couple of hours with them. They're so unbelievably heavy compared to Hyphamans, which I could wear all day and I never get any issues. Now, what you're going to get with really fast, detailed planars is you're going to get a really tight and focused low end. You're going to struggle to get it out dynamics, but with planars, you're really going to hear it. And what I love about the Nanos, and the reason why I use them, is because I get that relationship between the bass and the kick. You see, if everything's relaxed sounding and your headphones don't have a fast decay time, then the low end just kind of smears. It just kind of blends in together. Where when you've got a really fast decay time and you can actually hear that low end, that's why it's important to EQ to Harman. And the great thing about Odysseys and the Hyphamans is that they EQ really well, and you could like do big fucking bass boosts to get it to Harman, and you're not going to get any distortion, which is really, really, really important. And it's amazing how that detail can help you just make little tweaks. It's that refinement. I feel like I can refine the low end. There might be a click or a squeak or something that I didn't really pick up before. Honestly, mouth clicks is amazing for sibilance. Anything that's super fast, and like your transients, again, it's great for judging how loud your drums are. You can hear everything. And why it's super important to have this is because you can't mix what you can't hear. It really frustrates me when you get all these guys like, I personally don't mix on headphones. I mix on NS10s from 35 years ago. But honestly, I could tell you right now, if I was to get a pair of Sonys or, you know, some really bad dynamics, you know, £100 headphones, if I was to learn them, then 100% I would be able to make all mixing decisions on them, because all you've got to do is learn your headphones and how they sound with reference tracks. Yeah. Honestly, I know I come across a proper little bitch, but these things do annoy me because they're not true and they don't come from a place of experience. It's just like offhanded comments people say on the internet. You can't mix what you can't hear. I can't get the soundstage out of the Ananda Nanos or Odysseys because they always feel like they're very mid-focused. Because if you have the transients and you have the low end, then what you normally find is that all that sits in the mid channel. So the mid channel is almost taking priority and all the side stuff is sitting back a little bit and it's almost fighting against the punch in the transients. Where when you have a headphone that's got a really expansive soundstage, then the mid channel isn't really fighting as much and everything's just kind of being allowed to kind of just do that. Where with Odysseys and stuff like the Ananda Nanos, really fast, we can call them aggressive headphones, you'll normally find that your mid-image, the mids are kind of the things that's taking the priority. I basically get the mix to where I think it's done with the HE1000 SEs. And then I switch to the Ananda Nanos. And then normally I'm making tweaks here and there. I'm hearing stuff that I wasn't really hearing. And then I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until I've got a good balance between the two. And when I listen to both of them, I don't feel like anything needs changed. And that then brings me to the third category, which is headphones that work well with room simulations or like speaker emulations. Probably the one that I would have advised people the most, even though I don't use them, is Slate VSX, because Emra has been using that non-stop for years and years and years. And I know many people who swear by Slate VSX. I don't have Slate VSX. So what I use are these. I use the Olo S5X. There's already a video of me talking about them. They're really good for mixing an Atmos. I wasn't sure at the start, but now I've got my Atmos room calibrated. I use Acustica Sienna Sphere, and I set it a very, very specific way. And honestly, these things are very, very close to my Atmos room. It's quite scary. Now, what I like about these are that these have their own specific calibration EQ that comes with the headphones. You can basically download a reference file and they've got a plugin you can put in the DAW and it EQs them exact to their calibration target. That's meant to work really, really well. When I say meant to, they do. They're amazing. They work amazingly well with room simulations, which for me is ddmf Realphones. There are 2 reviews that I've done. I actually did a recent review a couple of weeks ago of their newest update. I'll leave it fucking wherever it's going to put it. Watch that. Now, what I do first is I go into what I would class as ddmf's best kind of room emulation. It just sounds like a really amazing room with amazing near fields. And I just listen, and I'm listening out for the panning, I'm listening out for the placement of things, and tonally I'm just trying to see if there's anything that I would tweak. And I'm not afraid to make tweaks. If I hear a tweak, I make it. And I'll just sit there and I normally find it's little tweaks at this stage, and it might just be tiny little tweaks. And then what I do is I go back to the hyphens and I listen to the changes that I've made. And again, I just go back and forth until I find that I don't need to make any changes in anything. And then from there, I go back to Realphones with the Olos and I listen to all like the real world simulations. I've got snapshots of them all. So I've got a home studio speaker set up in an untreated room. I've got a nightclub. I've got Bluetooth speakers. I've got like a pair of Oratones that sound really shitty. Sometimes I don't know why I still use them, because every time I stick them in, I'm just like, that's some shit. But normally I use them in mono. I always find it's a nice little mono test because they sound shitty. So if it still sounds, the mix still sounds pretty decent. And even through the fucking shit sound, if I could still hear everything it's still audible and the mix still makes sense and doesn't fall apart, then again, I just go through that. And I also do the car test as well, because I always want to hear how the big bass boost is affecting the entire mix. I always find that the car is an amazing resource for testing bass sustain. And that's normally the place where if a mix hasn't managed its low end right, and the low end sustain is just fucking masking the entire mid-range, then I always think that's a really, really, really good test. And there's a specific car that I use that I just think has that right balance where it's not completely dark. It's still got the mids and the tops, but the bass boost is there. So it just allows you to really hear how the bass is fighting that relationship between the low end and the mid-range. And when I'm using these, I'm a little bit more conservative about the tweaks. But what I'm really looking for are if there's anything that I'm like, oh, that really, really doesn't sound good. This element of the mix is too loud. And then I might bring little tweaks down. But then what I do is I go to the other references and I go back to the hyphens. And it's all a process. It's just going back and forth, back and forth. And normally that's when I would say that the mix is completely done. However, there is a fourth category. I always add this in because I do think it's very important and it makes a lot of sense. Because at this stage, you're mixing on headphones that have been EQ'd to the Harman target, which is based on speakers in a treated room. So essentially, you know that the headphones are going to translate well to speakers. I know they translate well to speakers because I actually do have speakers. I have Presonus Era Studio 8 and I've got the Kali IN UNFs. But I normally find that the real phones in combination with the hyphens means I normally hardly ever have to do anything in the speakers. Again, just it might be a subtle tweak, a little change here and there, and it's just all going like back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. However, again, you don't need to use speakers. Genuinely, I think I just do it because I've got them there and I like to be extra vigilant because I've got them. And as good as that is, that you've got good translation to speakers, it's only one part. And this is where category 4 comes in, the very last category. What you now need to do is you now need to test your mix on a headphone with a hi-fi curve. Now, don't worry, every headphone has an inbuilt hi-fi curve. Not every headphone is EQ'd to the Harman. You get some headphones and in-ears that are tuned specifically to Harman, but you'll find that in the consumer market, nearly all headphones are normally quite bright and they're hyped in the mid-range and they've got a little bit more brightness in the top end and they normally roll off a lot of the low end. So basically you're just getting a really bright, present, clear sounding mix. It doesn't matter what headphone it is. What all you've got to remember is that these specific headphone EQ tunings that all these headphones have are made to complement the music that's already mixed in a very certain way. They don't make EQ tunings for things to sound worse. They are very, very specific. So essentially, your mix should sound great on any set of headphones. Basically, I advise using something that you know very well and you listen day to day outside of the studio. So there's no EQ involved. You just know the sound of them very well. And for me, I'm using these, the Sony MDR MV1s. I just find that they are quite bright sounding. However, they've got this kind of really nice neutrality to them. It's funny because when you look at the measurements, they've got quite a lot of low mids in there. But when I listen to professional mixes, nothing ever sounds too much. I don't think mixes sound overly muddy, and they don't sound overly harsh, but shitty mixes do, and that's why I love these. A good mix will sound really kind of neutral and nice with a really nice sound stage. If it's a muddy mix, you're definitely going to hear it in these. I quite like the fact that they've got a little bit of a added low mid boost because they sound a little bit. It's funny because you would think you would get the warmth, but you've got a really, really big spike at around, I think it's 8K maybe, and that's to do with the immersive side of it and trying to get the rear information when you're listening to like Sony 360 mixes on headphones. But I really have found these to be a fantastic headphone for just checking how the mix sounds because I know them and I understand them. And this is kind of comes to the point where, yes, it is important to have headphones that you trust and you understand, but only to test if the mix sounds good. Like if a mix sounds good on these, then I know that the mix sounds good in the translation that I've done in here with all these headphones works. I would say it takes me around maybe 40 minutes. Sometimes an hour if it's a mix that I'm kind of struggling with. But even if it was a full hour, just doing all those back and forths, honestly, that hour will save you on recalls and it'll save you time further down the line when you take that mix and you listen to it on like fucking laptop speakers, or you listen to it on your car, or you listen to it on your mate's speakers or Bluetooth speakers, and you're like, oh shit, I need to change that, and that, and you're doing it blind, blah, blah, blah. Just take that time and get it right at the source. Honestly, if you follow those 4 categories, you'll be amazed at how your mixes translate and how you can trust your system. And I know it's frustrating because obviously, everybody's on a budget and it's not what you want to hear. That's like, oh, fuck that, I need to buy like fucking 4 pairs of headphones. Well, I'm sorry, right? There's people like Ed Thorne that spend thousands and thousands just on 1 pair of speakers. There's people that will spend the money for ATCs and focals and fucking PMCs, and that's because they understand the importance of monitoring and they need to get it right. Monitoring is so important, and if you genuinely do want to do this as a profession and you don't have the facility to be able to have a treated room, if you're doing it in your house, you can do it on headphones. It's just that you're probably going to need to spend the amount of money as you would on expensive monitoring, like speakers. I understand it's also really frustrating because you can't try out these headphones, but you've just got to find someplace. Again, if you can, use retailers that allow you to get like a 30-day guarantee. If you don't like them, you can get your money back. Just do whatever you can do to try these out and do actual mixes with them and listen for these characteristics. The options I've given you are viable options. You don't need to go for them. However, they're the ones that I've listened to, and those are the ones that I use and I really trust. I know it's not what you want to hear, but I can only give you the best advice that I can give you, and that's genuinely how the pros that I know are mixing on headphones. And there you have it. My name is Paul Third. Next week or maybe the week after, I don't know which one it's going to be, I'm going to finally reveal this studio because it is finished. It's fully finished. Atmos room's finished, the control room's finished, live room's finished. I put a fucking floor in it as well. I've got a big documentary that's kind of going to come out this year. I can't say too much about it. It's a whole Amazon music project. But yeah, there's more stuff coming out. I'm a very, very busy man. But if you have any queries, again, feel free to comment down below. You always know I comment back to like 99% of comments. So if I can help you out, I'll help you out. And yeah, I'll see you when I see you.